This is going to be so fun. I'm having a little bit of fun with allergies these last couple of days, which is a fun thing. Oh my gosh, Allie, we sure are praying for you. I'm sorry that you're not feeling too good, but I know I know that not feeling good stuff is doing what it needs to do and healing what needs to heal, so that you're making progress. Yeah, it's pretty funny. When I first moved here to Texas, I didn't know what allergies were. And I thought they were like when a cat came in the room and someone sneezed. But since I've moved here, I found out that it's like basically a disease, except that instead of catching it from other human beings, you catch it from the earth itself. Okay, so let's jump right in. I do, sorry, Allie. I do want to hear about you and your self-talk and where you get in trouble. And I think a really interesting question to start kind of like pondering right away is this idea of, why do you speak negatively to yourself? Because all of us do it, and we do it for a reason, because we got to get something out of it, right? It's got to be given us something. So it's just something to sort of ponder and be wondering, what do you get out of it? What's the gain? What's the upside of this? I mean, we know that the answer, the Sunday school answer, right, is that, oh no, it does nothing for me. It doesn't help me. I need to stop doing it. Yeah, that's true, but for some reason we do it. And so we got to be getting something from it. And so it's good to know, what is it? What's coming out of it that seems to be good for you? Now, the framework for today's talk is that I'm not going to get into these labels of negative and positive self-talk. We're beyond that. I don't want that anymore, because it's tempting sometimes when you say negative self-talk to think that is a dissatisfaction. I'm fostering a dissatisfaction with myself that motivates me to change. And we're going to nip that lie right in the bud, right from the way that we name it. It's not negative and positive self-talk. It's unproductive and productive self-talk. So the way that you speak to yourself is either productive or it's unproductive. And there is no debate beyond that. So that's sort of the first thing. And I also want to note that productive, it doesn't always mean positive. And this is an important thing for me. This meant a lot to me when this was acknowledged. That you can have sort of a correcting self-talk, or like holding your feet to the fire kind of self-talk. Iron sharpening iron, we say in Christianity, or tough love. You hear in the world. You can have talk like that. And sometimes you see positive benefits from it being a little bit harsh. I mean, if you look at your own life and you're being really honest, there are times when you were harsh with yourself, and it helped you to get the extra rep when you're in the gym. It helped you to push a little bit harder when you were sprinting. It helped you to turn down a temptation or to make some sort of a big change. It's not that it doesn't work, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend that it doesn't. It does have effects that tend to take you toward your goal, at least in the short term. But it also has side effects, and that's what we really want to notice, that there are side effects of this sort of approach, and they are primarily, or it is primarily, anxiety. It is what comes from this hard pushing and pushing yourself like this. You end up feeling anxious, and when you feel anxious, then you end up quitting, ultimately, because your journey is miserable. You're so focused on the results because your happiness is delayed until you get there. Until you reach those results, you're going to have to endure this anxiety. And it's just, it's a bad approach. So I just want to say that up front. It's not that it doesn't work. It's not that being angry in a sporting event doesn't sometimes foster a little bit of extra energy. It's just that it has side effects that we don't want to use. I think a really good analogy is like anabolic steroids, right? Like, you do get stronger. Like you can't deny the fact that if you start injecting these things, you bulk up and get strong. It gives you the results, but there are side effects that you don't want. I mean, you could say the same thing for like cocaine. If you were a track runner and you snorted some cocaine, you'd probably turn in your personal best time. It would pump you up right up until you had a heart attack and died on the track. And so it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that when we start taking into account the side effects, it has a net negative in productivity. And that's where we're going to address it. So we're going to be taking a look at this self-talk. We want to keep it productive. and we want to keep it sustainable, and we're going to start moving toward a good, healthy way of producing. So why is self-talk so important? I heard a great analogy that basically your self-talk is your coach in your head. It's how you coach you. And I think it's a really good way to think of it, and we're going to double down on that as we go through this. On that one way to look at it is super empowering. But basically, more than anything that you've accomplished in your life, more than any accolades you've received, more than any input, validation from the outside, there is nothing that has a big of an effect on your self-confidence as your self-talk. And so it's super important that you're talking to yourself in a productive manner, because we know how important self-confidence is and how hard it is to overcome when we feel incapable about doing something. The other thing is that, as Tony Robbins puts it, the quality of your communication is equal to the quality of your experience here on earth. So the communication that we have, it's with other people, but it's also with ourselves, our communication to ourselves. And so the way that we communicate to ourselves, the way that we tell ourselves the stories about what happens in our life, that is ultimately responsible for the experience that we have of life. A good example is like someone breaks up with you, someone that you care about leaves, they go on their way. Well, you could communicate that to yourself. You could communicate to yourself about that in two different ways. You could say, oh, I never can keep anyone happy. You know, it means that I'm just not worthy of their love, and of course they left. Or it could mean, oh, good, I'm glad, because this must not have been the right fit for me. Now I've got the space to maybe learn from what happened in that relationship, but also to be open to the one that I'm really looking for. That communication is going to make a big difference in your experience of the time that comes in after that result that may be entirely out of your control. So what I want to go through now, to kind of see what's important about it, is let's identify it. Let's name this stuff a little bit. So I've got it up here on the board already, just so it's easy to refer to throughout this whole thing. Unproductive self-talk, the way it's recognizable, the way you're going to be looking for this, is you're going to see pessimism, self-doubt, frustration, and self-critique, or being critical of yourself. This pessimism is not like glass half empty, glass half full kind of a thing. It's more like bad things are coming. It's probably going to be bad in the future. That kind of pessimism leads to some terrible self-talk. Self-doubt is the classic, I am not enough. Just operating from this place, I'm not enough. Frustration, I should be further. I should be better. This should be going differently than it is. That's what's going to cause that frustration. And then self-critique is probably the worst one. And it's when you just say to yourself, you're such an idiot. You're so stupid. How could you ever do that? You know, it's the actual just like bearing down terrible things that you say to yourself. Now, productive self-talk is what we kind of don't talk about too much. And that we have to always talk about stopping the negative self-talk, but what does productive self-talk look like? Well, it's optimism. My dad is a classic at this. His classic line that kind of drives my mom crazy, actually, is, we'll probably be okay. And that's where he lives his life from. We'll probably be okay. And so maybe we're going out in the mountains and, oh, there's going to be a storm, and should we go over here, and this might happen, and we might get stuck here. Yeah, it looks pretty dangerous, but we'll probably be okay. That's optimism right there. And what that opens you for is solutions, is why it's such a good idea. If you believe there is the possibility of better, then you start looking for solutions as you go along. This next one is swagger. I love this. I heard a podcast from Nicole Davis, who's a volleyball player, and she talks about having a swag statement. So swagger, we're going to define as when it's good to be you. When you just got this feeling, you're like, I got a little swagger. It's when I walk into a room and I'm like, you know who it's good to be? Me. That's an awesome feeling when that happens. And so what she talks about is that from that place, she defines a swag statement. So we'll get into that in a little bit, that you're going to have your own swag statement. Being present. This is a really important, not worried about the future, not stressed about the past, but just being present in what's in right here. When you listen to your self-talk and you feel that it's about the now, what's important now, that's when you know that you're in productive self-talk. And then this is one of my favorites. This also comes from Nicole, actually. Obstacles over accolades. And so what this is when your self-talk is about your capability because of what you've been through, not because of awards you've received or accomplishments that you've seen. So it's a little bit of a shift in where does your value come from. It comes from your obstacles, not your accolades. Really cool. Man, I don't have comments where I want to have comments, but I can kind of see mine here. I think, Ali, you were saying you made your players write swag statements. I really like that. I would actually love to hear more. I was brainstorming a few of what my swag statements might be because I've never worked on that, but I would be super curious to hear what some swag statements that you liked were that came out of that. I do also want to say, as we touched on a little bit, this idea of, well, what about tough love and iron sharpening iron and all of these pieces, you can sharpen. You know, like if I were to think about, from a Christian standpoint, if I were to think about what does productive talk look like to another person, it's not just, hey, whatever you do, and even though I could help, I'm not going to. That's positive. That's like everything you do is great. Everything you do is great. That's positive self-talk. That's not really the goal. We do want to be productive. And you can correct, and you can assess, and you can offer adjustment to yourself. You can make changes and say you'd like things to be even better than they are now, but you can do it in a productive way. And so if I think about, you know, if we jump into like a Christian standpoint, it's kind of easy to see that you come alongside like you see someone sinning, someone making choices in their life that are leading them down a path that has negative consequences. It's going to be very unproductive. That there is an unproductive way to speak to that person that's like, you're doing it wrong. You need to change. This is not going to work, and I can show you why. Let me show you. It's on this page of the Bible, and it backs me up, and it says, you're doing it wrong. And that's really unproductive, and honestly might sound familiar in terms of the self-talk that we have for ourselves. The more productive way to do this is with compassion and recognizing that we're in this together. And if, as a Christian, you walk up to somebody and you're like, hey, look, this is a sin struggle, and I've got these. I'm on this journey to try and walk towards a better way of living. Would you like to come along with me? Equal, a person who's in the same place I am, someone who's not like on a lower level because I saw your sin. It's such a different place to come from, and it is offering adjustment, and it is offering correction, and it can be seen as iron sharpening iron, holding feet to the fire, all those things that are kind of good for our growth, but it's done productively, and that's the key we want to look for, because if you're pointing your finger and say you're doing it wrong, you're being unproductive. That's up here. That's this category. And unproductive is not going to help us get to where we're trying to go. So I just wanted to have that there. I am going to get you guys. I will post in here this PDF. So I made a PDF that has these two things. And what they do is they go through each one of these things, and we want to talk about how to fix it and how to foster it. And so that's what I want to go through today. Is I'm going to go through each one of these things and talk specifically how do you address this one. So we'll start up here with the unproductive. Pessimism. You guys can chime in if you want. If any of these hit home more than the others, go ahead and let me know. You know which one is your biggest struggle. But this idea of pessimism we're going to look at first. And if I were to be honest, all of them are addressed in kind of the same way. There's some commonalities, and I put that in on the PDF. In all the cases, you're going to want to evaluate them, and you're also going to have compassion, and also meditation is a good key for addressing all of these things. But basically with pessimism, you're saying the worst case scenario is about to happen, and you're operating from that place. And what that does is it prevents you from looking at things with a solution mindset, because what's the point? Because the bad thing's going to happen anyway. And so the counter to this one is you want to ask, is that 100% true? Is there any way that I can know that's the way things are going to go? Because if I don't know, then I'm imagining. And if I'm imagining the future, then it's all make-believe. Once upon a time kind of stuff. This is all make-believe. And so if I'm make-believing, why am I make-believing negative, which limits any sort of motivation I have to take action, versus make-believing positive, where now I'm open to solutions and I can take this action. Much more productive to have positive make-believe than negative make-believe, which has to undo sometimes this belief that we have that the negative, the pessimism, is real, and the optimism is fantasy. And when we notice that they're both fantasy, that's a good way to address that. So sort of recognizing it, this things aren't going to work out kind of mentality, and then you can also bolster it down here with your obstacles over accolades, that as you start to build your confidence in what you've overcome, that even if some negative stuff is coming down the road, it doesn't have this meaning of, oh no, I'm defeated. It's like, oh, I'm kind of good at getting through tough stuff, and here comes some more tough stuff, I'll be okay. And so it'll probably be okay. There shows up again, my dad's famous line. All right, moving on. Moving down to this self-doubt. This is the one that I'm not enough. Oh, I see Alice commenting on here. I kind of want to read it. We're going to take a little pause. I'm going to try to figure out how to do this. One of my favorite ones, something like this. I'm only a freshman and I will bounce balls all day long. You'll never see me coming. I'm the first in the gym and the last to leave, and I'm just getting started. So be aware and put your helmets on. That's so crazy that it says put your helmets on. That's literally one of the ones that I had. Buckle up those chin straps, because it's about big boys are going to play. That's a great one. I love that idea, especially in volleyball, telling your other team to put their helmets on. Oh, let me look at this one too. Even though it never works well, somehow I still believe that if I run through the what is negative, then I'm somehow preparing ahead of time. Yeah, and I don't want to like completely steer you away from that. It's not a terrible idea to know the worst case scenario. It's just the probably. I guess it's probably going to go bad. Yeah, that's what my life is it's going to go bad. I think that being aware of the negative isn't always bad. That's just kind of putting cards on the table to make a decision. But it is, just something to be aware of. Like, where are you giving the most energy, and what's in your control, I guess. And is it 100% true? That's really where you want to get to, is just checking, like, yeah, that could happen, but is it 100% true that it's going to go that direction? All right, so when you start having self-doubt and thinking that you're not enough, that you're not capable of coming through, whatever is in front of you or accomplishing whatever task you have in front of you, that's where you want to take on that same evaluation idea of, is that 100% true, but also really taking a strong look at what else is true. And so, there's a quote like, no matter how thinly you slice something, there's always two sides, right? And so we're focused on this I'm not enough side and taking a look at this. And so when you notice yourself doing that, you want to literally ask yourself, what else is true? I'm going to take on another perspective at this. What else could be true about this situation? If you have an example of anything where you feel incapable, like, oh no, I'm just not prepared, I don't have the ability to do this. Well, what else is true? What else is true is that I'm going to fail at it, and that's going to be okay. When I fail, I'm going to learn. And then the failures that are in front of me are the path to my ultimately being capable of doing this thing. And I'm enough because I'm willing to take that journey, not because I've accomplished the thing. You just start jumping into all of the reasons why you might be enough to undermine the idea that this statement, I'm not enough, is fact. Because you start saying that to yourself, and your brain starts finding the evidence for it. And so that's, so for the first one, is that 100% true? For the bad outcome that's coming in the future, me not being enough, I want to know what else is true? What else is possible here? Frustration. This one is where I would come with compassion, to be honest. If I were coaching a volleyball player who was frustrated, and I addressed them, I might ask them, are you frustrated? And they're like, yeah, I'm frustrated. I keep messing up. I keep doing everything wrong. I'm breaking the team down. And I'm frustrated. And I'm like, that's great. I'm so glad that you're frustrated. It means that you really care about what's going on here, that you care about your growth, you care about this team, you care about, me, and there's so much good that's coming from your frustration. And there have been a lot of errors, and of course you're frustrated. Any human will be frustrated. The fact that your frustration doesn't mean that you're flawed. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It's simply that you're a human. And then I would ask the question, how would you like this experience to be? What would you like for it to look like when you come out on the volleyball court? What would you like for it to look like during the game? And you're just shifting their focus away from what's wrong to what could be right. And that's the same technique you're going to use with yourself. When you're frustrated, the negative side effects, when you're frustrated, like, I should be doing this better. That's definitely one of the ones where you're like, no, I've seen places in my past where a thought like that has motivated me to make improvements. However, it's building a framework of life that is what is wrong instead of what is right or what would I like to see right. And we'll get into that. There's a whole list of like exactly how we're going to achieve this stuff. But that's just the problem with that one is that it has a side effect of creating a what's wrong mentality. And so instead what you want to ask yourself is, how would you like it to be? If I were king of the world, what would this look like? Let me aim at that. Is there a way I can make that possible? And so now you're just taking a more productive approach to what's there. And then this last one is self-critique. And this is one where honestly, compassion is always going to be a part of these things. Evaluation and meditation, they're always really good at this. But what's good with self-critique is that if you meditate, you will learn the skill of seeing your thoughts as they just pass by, and being sort of without judgment, being away from them. The skill that builds in you that helps with how you deal with your self-critique is that you learn to kind of smile at it. Like I have self-critique about my own flaws. I don't like my hair. There are things about myself that I don't like, and sometimes I point, I'm like, oh man, you're so ugly. Like you look so old. You look so, and I've got this talk that comes in, but I can, with distance from it, you can see the thought. One of the expressions from a sports psychologist, Michael Gervais, is that you wink at it. He says, wink at it. And so you see these thoughts coming across, and they're really negative, like really just brutal things that you'd never say to a friend. You just kind of give it a little wink. Oh, there you are. Thanks for stopping by. So those are sort of like some specific techniques. Keeping in mind that evaluation isn't 100% true. What else is true? Compassion, of course you feel that way. All the humans feel that way. Let me give you some encouragement, and then we're going to take a look at what else is true and where we want to go next. And then also meditation. Those work for all of these. But I did want to give a specific, address specifically each one of those pieces. And then for the productive one, you're just going to come from a different framework. So I have, same thing, there's a productive one, another PDF that's productive. And basically it's just keeping this idea of love of the journey, staying in the arena, and having a learner's mindset is really all that is. Because everything is always productive. If you're learning something from it, if you're being proud of yourself for being in the arena, if you're like, yes, this is my journey and I love my journey, both the good parts and the bad parts, I know that that's what this is. That's what life is this journey. And so I want to be authentic. I want to feel it. I want to experience it. I want to stay present in it rather than buffer it and hide. That if you can continue to come from this place, it's going to go well for you. So I want to come back to these swag statements. The optimism one is really simple. It's just that when you think things are going to get better, just like we said before, it opens you up to the possibility of solutions. I wrote up, for my swag statement, I put, buckle that chin strap, the big boys are playing. I also put one, sometimes there are certain words that trigger emotion a little bit better. And I can't even find where I wrote it, but I wrote one that says I'm Jake Real, damn it, and I make stuff happen. And that's one that I probably don't say out loud a lot. I'm not like a super cussing kind of a person, but I like that one. It stirs an emotion in me, and I'm like, look, I'm Jake Real, damn it, and I make things happen. And it's like, it's good to be me, is what that feels like to me, and it gives me some positive. So I try to rehearse that one. It was kind of fun to go inside my brain and find those, because I'd never really put them like word for word like that before. So definitely something to try. Go see what pops up for you, and it's all right if they're not all school appropriate as you go through that stuff. This one, so for being present, I always use the acronym What's Important Now. WIN. What's important now. And then this last, as we talked about, the obstacles over accolades. I would actually say that if you're trying to foster this a little bit more in you, go make a physical list of obstacles that you've overcome, and really make it, and then read it, and really find your confidence not in your awards, not in your accomplishments, not in your results, but in the obstacles that you've faced, that you've been willing to face them, the times that you've been willing to stay in the arena even when you're feeling the agony of defeat, and that you're like, it kind of puts your shoulders back a little bit. It's like, that's right. I am willing to feel that. And it could be worse. It could be worse than this thing in defeat. I could be up there in the crowd. and at least I'm here, at least I'm fighting, and have this list of the places where you got in, win or lose, you got in and fought. And start fostering that pride and that positive self-talk about your willingness to stay in there. So hopefully that helps with those. If you have any questions, for sure throw them on here. And what I'm going to go to next, what I want to jump into next is this idea of this self-talk, all of this stuff, whether you're focusing here or focusing here, what you are becoming is your own coach. That what you hear inside your mind is you coaching you, and you're coaching yourself with keywords and triggers and concepts and team philosophies, and you have buy-in into either unproductive things or productive things, depending on what kind of team culture you've created between your ears, right? And so as I thought about this concept more and more, what I really want to be is I want to be a world-class coach to myself. And so I want to figure out how do I become just an awesome coach? And so naturally I started thinking about, well, what do coaches do? Sports coaches. When I look at sports coaches I've liked, what's true about them? Well, one thing is that they played the game usually. They've got some experience at this whatever. And so they can look back and they can see what went well, what didn't go well, what did they like in the coaching they received, what did they not like, back and forth. Well, when we put that into our own mind, that's simply us going back into our experience. Like we've experienced us. We're actually the expert on the experience of us. So we can take a look back at, what went well, what would we like to go even better? That's what we like to ask the question. What went well, and what would I like to go even better, to avoid the trap of looking for this what went wrong mentality that just has the negative side effect of anxiety. How did you get through? When you look at these obstacles in your life, like you're here, how did you make it? How did you make it through the hard stuff that went in the past? And what must you have learned? You must have figured something out, right? Because when you look back at your past and it's like, these are all the reasons that I'm broken, but you're here. And so you must have done something, right? That learned. And so when you start looking at your past in that way, it starts to kind of open your mind to the idea of how would a world-class coach take a look at the experience they bring to their new team, which for inside your own brain is basically your present. How are you going to bring the experience that you have from the past and make it so that you're going to coach the best team you can right here in the present? The next thing is that the coaches that I've loved and the coach I'd like to be, the coaches that I admire and look at as world-class coaches, they are trying to foster max potential. They're trying to get the most out of their players, to teach their players the most they can at one time. It's not about always having the best team, actually. It's not about always winning the game or the championship. They're like, sometimes you start off with a player that's just lower on their journey to this place where you'd have a championship, and you're like, well, I want to make the most improvement I can. I want to foster as much max potential as I can get out of here. And it's a little different mindset than like a championship mindset. When you do that, one of the things you can do for yourself is you can stretch. So a coach is going to say, if I'm trying to reach your max potential, I believe there's more in you than you believe is in you. That's very common from a world-class coach, right? And so if you stretch, if you're making a habit out of making plans to do things that seem like they're just a little bit outside your current ability, that's stretching. That's going after. Now, there's going to be a lot of failure in that process, the same way there is when a team is trying to grow. But you're just sort of taking pride in this idea that I'm going to get a little bit outside of my current beliefs about my ability. I'm going to set a goal there, and I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to execute that plan. I'm going to evaluate, and I'm going to adjust it to see what sort of growth is there. And then instead of asking, how can I get to my goal faster? How can I achieve my goal? It seems like it'll be better if I have this goal. You're going to ask yourself the question, how could I grow better? How could I be a better coach? A coach's job is to develop these players. How can I help me grow better instead of how can I get there faster? It's a slightly different question that's going to give you some different solutions and hopefully foster a little different kind of self-talk. I'm going to check in on this. Jennifer, I'm determined. I'm stubborn. I've taken ownership of my decisions. Oh man, what swag. Those are some good swag statements. One of my favorite quotes, Wolf Emerson, what you do, you speak so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. That is awesome. My thing says, show me more. Uh-oh. But it's not letting me show more. I think I almost just lost my life, so I'm going to stop pressing on that button. Okay, and then the last one, so we've got what good coaches do is they take their own experience and they figure out how they're going to coach the current team the best that they can. They also look for max potential, and so they're encouraging their players to stretch beyond what they currently think they're capable of. And the third thing I have on here is that they really try to increase their own coaching ability. They're asking themselves, how can I be a better coach? And so, yes, you are trying to give yourself productive self-talk to, that you're the athlete and you want to hear productive self-talk, but also you're the coach. And you want to be learning, how do I offer myself more productive self-talk? How do I improve my self-talk so that I can improve my performance, right? It's like a double-edged sword. If I can improve my self-talk, then I can doubly improve my performance because now I'm going to be even better at talking to myself in a good way. And so, of course, a coach would, you always go to these coaching clinics and you look at other coaches who are doing it well, you read the books, you're trying to figure out how are they forming their players the best way they can. That they consistently have growth on their teams. How are they doing that? You're going to do the same for yourself. It could be podcasts, it could be books that you read. You're just on this hunt. You're giving yourself, you're giving your brain this question, how can I be a better coach to myself? I aspire to be a world-class coach to myself. How can I do it? And let your brain feast on finding solutions to that question instead of all of the beating yourself up that comes so natural. So those are sort of the three characteristics of a self-coach. And then I also want to take a look at what a self-coach knows so that we can kind of build on that. And then we'll take a look at how do we transition just real quick. So just a little bit more for you. A self-coach knows that process is way greater than outcomes. And it's to such an extent, this is the way I love to hear it framed. Everyone wants a good outcome. Every athlete wants to win. Every athlete wants a championship. No one's pretending it's any different. However, in every single case, that is entirely out of their control. Their playing time is out of their control. The wins and losses are out of their control. How the other teams perform, the weather, there's so much stuff that's out of their control that affects this outcome. The outcome's out of your control. Therefore, even though it's important, it's a distraction. And it should be seen as such. It's a distraction. And I love it, like decreasing the result to that level. Do I want it? Yes, I do. There's lots of things I want that are distractions. Comfort, safety, all these things. I want them, but they're distractions. And so that's what a good coach knows, is that the outcome is actually a distraction. I need you focused on the process. I need you focused on growth. I need you taking pride in the journey that you're on, not just the outcome that you may or may not achieve. Which leads directly into the other thing that a coach knows, that where you are in the journey isn't scary to a great coach. If you think about someone who's coached thousands of players, then whenever a player comes in, whenever he meets a new player, evaluates his player, they're somewhere on this journey. And there's no thoughts of like, oh, dang it. Sorry. Oh, dang it. You should be further along than you are right now. Dang, you shouldn't be here. I wish you were further down the road. The coach isn't worried like, oh man, if you're not here by now, you're never going to reach there. No, the coach is like, okay, this is where you are. Yeah, I've coached hundreds of players. They're in the exact same place you are. This is where we go next. And it's real simple. The drama is out of it, right? That's what a world-class coach knows. That he's a coach that coaches people, that causes growth. And so where you are is unimportant because the growth is coming. And so that's a real nice change. The last one is the shift away from outcomes. Like we talked about, it's a distraction, but what do you shift it to? And so I have a list on here. Willingness, connection through vulnerability. That's a huge one. Who's on this journey with you? If you think about what a coach focuses on, it's not just what can you contribute? Did you do your part? The coach is trying to foster relationship among this team because the coach knows how important relationship is. It's the same for you. You're on a journey and you're not alone. You got people that are with you. And so invest, focus on that. Where can I be vulnerable? Where can I build connection with the people around me instead of just focusing on achieving my goal, achieving my goal, achieving my goal? Mental nimbleness. I love this. That nimbleness came from actually a podcast I did a little bit ago with a woman who was, she does improv comedy acting. And she talks about the nimbleness of an improv actor, that they have a skill of adjusting. They have a skill of bouncing around as things change quickly. They change with it. And that's what I would like, is to focus on my mental nimbleness. How well can I adjust to the surprises, to what was unexpected, to what did not meet my expectations? I want to have a nimbleness at how I adjust to that. Courage is a big one, because athletes know that there's going to be fear involved, right, in every game, and they're going to have to go forward with courage. And so, great place to focus. Am I too focused on have I achieved my result yet? Have I achieved my result yet? No, look at the courageous way I'm taking this journey. Such a better place to have productive self-talk coming from. Thoughtfulness, serving others. How can I be a good teammate? How can I help the people around me? Where on this journey can I shift my focus away from this outcome and toward how can I just help? How can I be there for someone else? And we know how that gets our mind into a good place where we're having now productive thoughts and speaking to ourselves in a productive way. Our attitude and our effort. Those are really, ultimately, at the end of the day, the only things that are in our control. Is what's my attitude like? Is it an attitude of commitment? Is it an attitude of discipline? Is it an attitude of willingness of like, I choose to be happy? And then what kind of effort am I putting in to this program that I'm on? Regardless of self-sabotage, regardless of my errors, regardless of how many times I've buffered or quit or fallen off the wagon, what's my effort look like now in this moment? Because our attitude and our effort in this moment is the only thing we really have control over. Great place to put your focus, not a distraction. And then the last one is commitment. One little vulnerability, a little confession. Whitney showed me Rocky for the first time. I had never seen Rocky, 44 years old. I had never watched the movie. So we watched Rocky 2, and it's a quote from Rocky. I know a lot about Rocky before ever seeing the movie, but I know that he said that it was all about not how hard can you hit, it's how many times can you get up off the mat after you get hit, right? It's this whole thing. That commitment to getting back on your feet, that commitment to getting up. And knowing that along this journey, it's not just that external forces are going to act on you in a negative way, that kind of sets you back and feels unproductive. Yeah, you're going to get back up and you're going to keep on marching through that. That's kind of the part that I think is easy when that stuff from the outside. It's that sometimes I'm going to mess up. Sometimes I'm going to feel shame about the way I showed up. Sometimes I'm like, I blew it. I could have done it well and I did it poorly. And I feel like that's the harder one to get past, but I'm committed to staying on this path even when I'm the one who messes me up. And when you can get to that place, that level of commitment, now we're talking about shifting our focus someplace good. So that whole list, willingness, connection, mental nimbleness, courage, thoughtfulness, attitude, effort, and commitment, that's where you want your focus if you're looking at fostering this productive self-talk and getting rid of this unproductive. All of this stuff is coming from results. All of this stuff is coming from I'm not as far as I should be. I'll be happy once I get there. If we can shift to that, the other list, the willingness, the connection, the mental nimbleness, courage, thoughtfulness, attitude, effort, and commitment, that is what is going to get this sort of talk coming out of your mind. I'm getting hit for not seeing Rocky. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? And I don't mean that I know the story. I knew what happened, but I just hadn't actually watched it. It was pretty good though. Not a bad movie. Okay. So the last thing that I want to leave you with is I want you to speak to yourself with uncommon consistency. That's the goal in a coaching program. If you've ever been around a good coach, if you've been coached by someone, they have trigger phrases that they say to you. Volleyball ones are the ones that come to my mind. They're like early platform, and it's like boom. There's a whole list of actions that kind of come into this, and they tell you to put that early platform on. It's this trigger word, and the coach is very consistent. Early platform, early platform. See you, Allie. Good luck. We'll check in with you in a little bit. And I'll make sure this is recorded so you can watch it whenever. You want to have that same sort of consistency when you're speaking to yourself. You want to have uncommon consistency, to be using the same language over and over again so that you're not accidentally falling into this space. You're being very consistent about this. And so there are 3 ways I want to talk about doing that, and then we'll wrap this up. The first one is that you're going to coach yourself like you'd coach your best friend. And at least I'm sure you can relate to this, and hopefully other people too, but as you grow as an athlete, as you become more elite as an athlete, move up through the ranks higher and higher and higher, you get less and less encouragement from your coach. A lot fewer, hey, good jobs. Like, you've really got to do something exceptional to, for your coach to get a thumbs up, versus when you were in AYSO soccer or T-ball. Everything you did, you're doing great, just as good that you're alive. And they got this out there. So as you become more and more elite, as you get further in your life and you're going after bigger and bigger dreams, it's okay that encouragement isn't coming from the outside. That's the way it works. I mean, we've seen that, and almost every elite athlete has experienced that as they work their way through. So it's a very important skill to be able to provide that encouragement to yourself. And so that's you want to be coaching yourself as if you're coaching your best friend out there, and you would offer them a lot of encouragement. And so you want to be offering that. Yeah, coaches do get nitpicky because coaches are very results focused. Unfortunately, they really do have this like, oh, it's going to go wrong and you're not where you should be, and are you an idiot? That does come out. So, but that's a great example of why we have to be supplying it to ourselves rather than seeking it externally to come onto us. Remember to keep it productive by asking what's important now. All of the lessons from the past can come into now. Our attitude and our effort in the present is all that we really have control over. We don't have control over the future. We can't change the past. We have this moment. And I can't even affect the circumstances necessarily of this moment. All I have control over is my attitude and my effort right now. And if I can just keep myself in that place, that's where I can tap into my ability to be productive with the skills I do have available to me here. And then the very last one is to be strength-based, to be a strength-based coach. And the example that comes to mind of that is thinking about coaching hitters in volleyball. And so we're running a drill, and so one of my athletes would hit a ball. And I go over to him, and maybe he hit it out. And I'm like, hey, what went right about that? And he's like, well, I did get my feet to the ball. And I was like, yeah, you did. That's great. You did a good job with that. And then like, what could be even better is the question I'd ask. His answer, well, I could hit the ball in. It's often where that goes, like, that's what went wrong. I'm asking what could be even better. He's like, well, I could keep my shoulders, I could keep my left shoulder in, and that way my over-rotation wouldn't send the ball outside the boundary, it would keep it inside the boundary. So I do want to keep my left shoulder in, maybe I could reach a little higher. All of a sudden, see how that switch in that question switched this to a process-focused conversation rather than a results-focused conversation. So make sure that you want to have a strength-based evaluation system of how things are going. What went well and what could go even better? That's the way we're looking at these questions. It's not natural to take a look at it that way. It definitely goes against the grain. And I've coached so many athletes who talk about, no, I'm fueled by anger. When I get mad, I play my best and I work out my hardest. And it's like we said, it's not that they're wrong. It's not that never happens and that no one ever plays well when they're angry. It's just that it has side effects that we don't want in our life. And to be honest, it's easy. When you're not doing things well, when you're not executing towards your goal in the way that you want, it's easy to be angry with yourself. It's easy to be frustrated. It's easy to critique yourself in a really harsh way. It's easy to anticipate that things are going to go bad in the future. That athlete or that person, however you want to look at it in the analogy, they're taking the easy way. We don't want to settle for easy. We want to actually grow, right? We want to actually be productive. And so just to be aware that there is a way to do this that doesn't require this beating yourself up all the time, but it requires some courage, because it takes a lot of faith to believe that if I love myself as I am, I will be the most motivated to change. That if I love where I am, if I speak to myself like a world-class coach, then I will also become a world-class performer, an elite athlete. That a world-class coach coaches the best athletes that there are. And so why would I want to be like that coach I hated when I was 15 instead of being like a world-class coach to myself? We work with so many clients who have such negative self-talk, and we see it being so unproductive. And really it's such a key to be able to do this productive self-talk, because you want to be the productive coach. Even though like maybe Whit and I are your coaches, but we're your coaches for such a short amount of time. You're talking to yourself all the time. And when we're not there, you are your coach, and your self-talk is coaching you. And it is so invaluable to be able to do that in a good way. And so I just, this has become a message, it's sort of a passion of mine to speak to yourself well. And so I really do want to get this out there as much as possible. So I will be pressuring you a little bit to do that once I get this cleaned up, get the PDF attached to it. And then the other thing that's going to be good about making sure you download that PDF is that it's not just the two things of the notes. It also has on it a reflection where you can go through and sort of check in on your own self-talk, how it is, how you like it to be, where you can make adjustments.